Have you ever wondered why some people live vibrant, fulfilling lives well into their 90s, while others seem to fade away in their 70s or even earlier? It's easy to think it's just about genetics or luck, but the truth is far more complex and often far more preventable. Hidden beneath the surface of modern aging are quiet, invisible forces that slowly chip away at life's vitality, factors that go unnoticed until it's too late. This video uncovers the real reasons many older people struggle to live past 80. Not the ones you expect, not just heart disease or cancer, but deeper, silent culprits like emotional isolation, loss of purpose, or even how society treats the elderly. These are the truths no one talks about, but everyone deserves to know. If you care about your future, or someone you love, this is the wake-up call you didn't know you needed. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The silent epidemic, loneliness. There's a quiet kind of suffering that doesn't show up in blood tests or x-rays. It doesn't scream for attention, and it often hides behind soft smiles and simple phrases like, "I'm fine," or "Don't worry about me." But behind those words lies something deeper, something more dangerous. Loneliness, a creeping silence that enters slowly, then stays. And for many older people, it becomes a lifelong companion, one they never chose, but one they can't seem to escape. In the earlier years of life, the world feels busy, full, even crowded. There are school friends, college roommates, coworkers, spouses, children, family gatherings, and social events. Even the quiet moments are filled with the comfort of knowing someone is near. But as the years pass, that crowd slowly starts to thin. Children grow up and build lives of their own, often far away. Friends age and move on. Some pass away. Spouses, who once filled every corner of the day with their presence, are gone. The phone rings less. The house grows still. The days begin to blend into one another. And then there comes a day when a person realizes no one is expecting them today. No one is coming by. And perhaps worst of all, no one would notice if they weren't here tomorrow. It's hard to describe this kind of emptiness. It doesn't announce itself all at once. It builds slowly. The mornings feel longer. Meals become solitary routines. Conversations turn into monologues directed at old photographs or faded memories. And with each passing week, the silence grows heavier, pressing against the chest like an invisible weight. It's not just emotional. The body begins to change too. Sleep becomes restless. The heart beats with more strain. Appetite fades. The brain slows. The immune system weakens. It's as though the body begins to mirror the loneliness inside the mind. There was an elderly woman named Margaret who lived in a small house at the edge of a quiet lane. Her days were filled with the routines she had perfected over decades: a morning cup of tea, feeding the birds in the garden, and reading old novels she had already read a dozen times. Her husband had passed away 7 years prior. Her daughter called once a week from another state, always in a rush between meetings. Neighbors waved politely, but rarely stopped to chat. And though Margaret never complained, never asked for help, she was dying a little more each day. Not from illness, but from being unseen. It's easy to overlook someone like Margaret. She never made a fuss. She always said she was fine. But the truth is, no one is meant to live in isolation. We are not built for prolonged silence or empty rooms. The human heart needs connection the way the lungs need air. Without it, something vital begins to collapse, something invisible, yet deeply real. This isn't just sentiment. Modern research has shown that chronic loneliness is as harmful as smoking a pack of cigarettes every day. It increases the risk of heart disease, stroke, dementia, depression, and even early death. The body interprets loneliness as a threat, flooding the bloodstream with stress hormones, disrupting sleep, raising blood pressure, and impairing the immune response. The mind, too, begins to suffer. Memories blur, thoughts grow heavy, and in some cases, reality itself starts to slip away. But the most painful part of loneliness is not the absence of people. It's the absence of purpose. When an older person wakes up and feels they have no one to talk to, nothing meaningful to do, no reason to get dressed, no reason to smile, that's when life begins to dim. The light goes out slowly, quietly, without warning. Yet the antidote is not complex. It doesn't require medicine or therapy. It requires something much simpler, something profoundly human: attention. A genuine conversation, a shared laugh, a simple act of kindness, a visit, a call, an invitation. These small gestures carry immense power. They tell the lonely that they are seen, that they are valued, that their presence matters, that their life still holds meaning. There's something sacred about being remembered, something healing about being included. When an older person receives a letter, a video call, or even a warm hello from a neighbor, it tells them the world hasn't forgotten them, that they still belong in it, that they are still loved. Loneliness is not just about being alone. It's about feeling forgotten, feeling invisible. And when that feeling persists, it can quietly take years off a person's life. We must not let that happen. Not when the solution is as simple as reaching out. Because in the end, we all age. We all grow old. And the kind of world we create for our elders is a reflection of the kind of world we will one day inherit for ourselves. So let us be the ones who remember, the ones who show up, the ones who keep the light on in someone's quiet home. Chapter 2: The Slow Poison in Activity. As the years pass and the pace of life naturally slows down, it's easy for movement to become something optional. What was once second nature, getting up early, walking to the store, gardening, cleaning, dancing, running after children, starts to fade. The body stiffens, the joints ache, and comfort becomes a refuge. A soft chair, a warm bed, a quiet afternoon spent watching television or gazing out the window. While there's nothing wrong with rest, too much of it becomes a silent enemy, slowly stealing strength, vitality, and eventually years of life. Inactivity is not just the absence of exercise. It's the absence of engagement. It's the slow but steady retreat from the world, where the limbs are no longer challenged, the heart no longer pushed, and the lungs no longer asked to expand deeply. Muscles weaken, not from illness, but from disuse. Bones become brittle, not from trauma, but from stagnation. The once sturdy frame that carried groceries and grandchildren begins to shrink inward, not because of age alone, but because it is no longer being used as it was meant to. For older adults, especially those living alone or in care homes, physical activity often becomes limited to the bare minimum: getting out of bed, walking to the bathroom, maybe a shuffle to the kitchen. Days can pass with hardly a stretch. And because pain or fear of falling often discourages even basic movement, the pattern continues until simply standing feels like a mountain to climb. But the body remembers. It remembers what it used to do, what it was built for. Even after years of stillness, there's a flicker of vitality waiting to be reignited. The tragedy is not that people lose their strength. It's that they stop trying to keep it. And slowly, over time, they surrender to stillness, not because they have to, but because it has become familiar. Imagine an elderly man named Harold. Once a carpenter, he spent his life building, climbing, carrying, creating. His hands were rough, his shoulders broad, his legs steady. But after retirement, and especially after his wife passed, his movements became fewer. He no longer built anything. No one needed a shelf fixed or a table carved. He sat more, walked less. When his knees ached, he rested. When his back twinged, he stayed still. Slowly, his world shrank to the size of his living room. And even though Harold was surrounded by memories of strength, he now struggled to lift a kettle. This loss isn't just physical, it affects everything. With inactivity comes a cascade of consequences. Blood circulation slows. Muscles atrophy. Balance falters. The risk of falls increases. Metabolism changes, often leading to weight gain or dangerous weight loss. Even digestion becomes sluggish. Sleep becomes restless. The immune system weakens. And crucially, the brain, like the body, begins to dull. That's the thing about inactivity. It affects not just the body, but the mind. Movement stimulates blood flow, which fuels the brain with oxygen and nutrients. It triggers the release of hormones that improve mood, sharpen memory, and reduce stress. When we stop moving, we also stop sending those life-giving signals to our brains. Depression, anxiety, and cognitive decline begin to set in, not because the person is old, but because the engine is no longer being revved. Yet many older people believe it's too late, that their time for movement has passed. That age is a reason to stop trying. But in truth, age is the reason to try even harder. Because while a younger body may bounce back quickly, an older one needs daily reminders that it's still capable, that it still has strength to give, that it still belongs in motion. Small efforts make a massive difference. A morning walk around the garden, a few stretches by the window, light chores, chair exercises, dancing slowly to a favorite song. These aren't grand gestures, they're life-saving ones. Each movement sends a message. I am still here. I am still strong. I am still alive. And that message echoes into every corner of the body. The heart beats stronger. The lungs fill more deeply. The joints stay lubricated. The bones stay dense. The mind feels clearer. The spirit feels more awake. Movement is not just physical, it's proof that life is still flowing. There is a deep and unspoken joy that comes from using one's body. From reaching up to grab a glass from the cupboard, from bending to tie one's own shoe, from walking to the store and carrying groceries home. These are not small victories, they are triumphs. Each one is a declaration of independence, a rebellion against decline. Chapter 3. The Hidden Threat, Poor Sleep. There is something quietly sacred about a good night's sleep. The way the body surrenders to rest, the mind detaches from the noise of the world, and the soul, for a few hours, finds peace. In youth, sleep is often taken for granted. Long nights melt into mornings without consequence. But as the body grows older, sleep becomes elusive, fragmented, fragile. And with its loss comes a slow unraveling that many never see coming. Poor sleep isn't just about feeling tired. It is a hidden threat, a silent thief that steals vitality from the inside out. When sleep is disturbed night after night, the body cannot heal. The mind cannot reset. The emotions cannot balance. And over time, that sleep deprivation, subtle and consistent, can shorten life without ever sounding an alarm. For many older adults, sleep becomes a battle. Falling asleep takes longer. Staying asleep becomes difficult. And even when the eyes are closed, the rest is light and broken. The nights feel endless, the mornings groggy. It's easy to assume that this is just part of aging, but that belief is dangerous. Because while sleep patterns do change with age, chronic poor sleep is not natural. It is a symptom, a warning, a sign that the body and mind are not in sync. One of the main culprits is the body's circadian rhythm, the internal clock that regulates sleep and wakefulness. As people grow older, this rhythm becomes more vulnerable. Exposure to sunlight diminishes, especially for those who stay indoors most of the day. This confuses the body's signals, making it harder to wind down at night or feel fully alert in the morning. As darkness falls, instead of producing melatonin, the hormone that promotes sleep, the body stays restless, caught between states. And so, night becomes a time of anxiety rather than rest. Thoughts wander. Regrets surface. Fears grow louder in the quiet. The mind races, the body stirs. Some turn to television to drown the silence, others to medications that promise relief but often create dependency. The sleep that eventually comes is shallow. The dreams are hazy, interrupted. The body never fully lets go. Sleep is more than rest, it is repair. During deep sleep, the brain cleans itself. It clears away the toxic waste that accumulates from thoughts and activities throughout the day. Without this cleanup, mental clarity suffers. Memory fades. Reaction time slows. Mood swings increase. It becomes harder to focus, harder to feel joy. Over time, the lack of proper sleep contributes directly to dementia, depression, and even heart disease. Poor sleep also affects the immune system. The body loses its ability to fight infections, to heal from injuries, to regulate inflammation. Blood pressure rises. Sugar levels become unstable. The risk of stroke and heart attack climbs. All of this happens quietly beneath the surface while the person blames age or illness, never realizing that their body is screaming for sleep. And then there is the emotional cost. The person who does not sleep well feels the world differently. Mornings are foggy. Moods are heavy. Patience is thin. Enthusiasm fades. Without rest, everything feels harder. Getting dressed, making breakfast, having a conversation. Joy becomes a memory. Life loses color. And the person, though still alive, feels like they are only half awake, half present. Consider a woman named Elaine. In her youth, she was full of energy, up at sunrise, gardening, baking, laughing easily. But in her late 70s, after her husband died, sleep became her enemy. Grief kept her awake at first, but then it became something else. Her thoughts wouldn't stop at night. Her legs would twitch. Her back ached when she lay too long. She began taking sleeping pills, but they made her drowsy during the day. She napped too much. Then she couldn't sleep at night again. A cycle began: restless nights, slow days, deep sadness. Her doctor blamed age. Her friends said it was normal. But nothing about her exhaustion felt normal. And the worst part wasn't the tiredness, it was the feeling of being disconnected from herself, from her life. She was living in a permanent haze. And she missed who she used to be. Elaine's story is not rare, and it's not irreversible. The body remembers how to sleep, but it needs help. It needs routine. It needs rhythm. It needs care. Small changes can make a profound difference. Exposure to morning sunlight, turning off screens an hour before bed, keeping the bedroom cool and dark, avoiding caffeine late in the day, moving the body during the day so it's ready to rest at night, letting the mind slow down with soft music, gentle breathing, or prayer. Chapter 4: The Unseen Enemy, Chronic Stress. Stress is often thought of as a passing feeling, an emotional flare-up that rises in moments of crisis and then fades. But for many older people, stress is not an occasional visitor. It is a constant companion. And unlike a loud explosion that grabs attention, chronic stress whispers. It hides in the background, tightening the chest, quickening the breath, tensing the muscles, draining the spirit, day after day, month after month. It doesn't demand immediate action, which is why it is so dangerous. It simply settles in, wearing the body down from the inside until it begins to break. As people grow older, the shape of stress changes. It is no longer about deadlines or career competition. Instead, it becomes tied to more personal fears: the fear of illness, the fear of losing independence, the fear of being forgotten. It stems from financial insecurity, the uncertainty of medical costs, the burden of maintaining a household, or the loneliness of waking up to silence. Stress also blooms in grief: the death of a spouse, the fading health of friends, the growing distance from children who have moved far away, both physically and emotionally. But what makes chronic stress so uniquely harmful is its invisibility. On the outside, an elderly person may smile, keep a polite conversation, or nod during a family visit. But inside, their body may be flooded with cortisol, the hormone of stress. This chemical, when released occasionally, can be helpful. It helps the body respond to danger. But when it lingers in the bloodstream too long, it becomes toxic. It inflames arteries. It stiffens the heart. It suppresses the immune system. It disrupts sleep, appetite, memory. It becomes a slow, persistent erosion of well-being. The body under stress never rests. Even in stillness, it is alert. Muscles remain tight. The mind loops through fears. The heart beats faster. Digestion slows. Healing stalls. For an older person already dealing with the natural wear of time, this additional strain can push the body beyond its limits. Stress does not need a dramatic event to cause damage. Quiet, ongoing worries are enough to shave years off a life. There is also an emotional toll. Chronic stress clouds the mind. It brings irritability, sadness, hopelessness. It distorts perspective. A small inconvenience feels like a disaster. A minor mistake feels like a failure. And worst of all, it convinces the person that this state of tension is normal, that life at this stage is supposed to be heavy, anxious, and joyless. It becomes harder to laugh, harder to hope, harder to feel peace. Take the example of a man named Gerald. After retiring from his job at age 67, he imagined a peaceful life. But he quickly realized that without structure, his days felt empty. His pension barely covered the bills. His wife had passed, and his children were busy with their own lives. At first, the stress was subtle, a worry about whether he could afford groceries, a restless night spent thinking about old age. But over time, the worry deepened. He stopped going outside. He lost interest in food. He developed stomach issues, frequent colds, unexplained fatigue. Doctors couldn't find anything specific. But the truth was, Gerald was drowning in chronic stress. Not from one big moment, but from hundreds of small ones, each one chipping away at his sense of safety. What makes this even more painful is how rarely stress is acknowledged among the elderly. When a younger person feels overwhelmed, people listen. But when an older adult complains of being tired or anxious or emotionally drained, it's often dismissed as just aging. The emotional world of seniors becomes invisible, unspoken, pushed aside. They are told to stay positive, to be grateful they're still around, to stop worrying. But gratitude cannot erase stress. And being alive is not the same as living in peace. It is possible, however, to reclaim calm. Not by erasing the problems, but by changing the way the body and mind respond. This begins with awareness. To name stress is to soften its grip. It means recognizing when the breath becomes shallow, when the heart races, when thoughts feel stuck in loops. It means creating small moments of stillness each day, not just in action, but in spirit. Gentle walks, quiet prayer, listening to soft music, sitting near a window with sunlight on the face. These things are not luxuries, they are medicine for the nervous system. It also helps to speak. Stress loses power when it is shared. A trusted friend, a support group, even a journal can offer relief. When emotions are bottled, they ferment into something toxic. But when they are released, they breathe. They move. They make space for healing. And perhaps the most important thing is to stop fighting time. Many older people carry stress from trying to hold on to youth, to control, to the way things used to be. But aging is not a failure. It is not a punishment. It is a passage. And when approached with grace, it can be a deeply peaceful one. Letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means accepting what is and choosing to soften around it. To treat oneself with the same kindness that would be offered to a beloved child or friend. To allow imperfection. To rest, to breathe. Chronic stress is not always loud, but it is always harmful. And when it is understood, not judged or ignored, but understood, it can begin to loosen its grip. The path to a longer, healthier life is not paved only with medications or exercise. It is also lined with calm, with acceptance, with the quiet strength that comes from within. Chapter 5, The Final Burden, Purpose Lost. There comes a moment in life, subtle and slow, when the rhythms that once gave the day meaning begin to fade. The morning alarm no longer sounds. The office desk sits empty. The phone rings less. Children grow up, friends drift, and society begins to look past the shoulders of the elderly, turning its attention to the newer, younger generation. And in this quiet withdrawal from the world, something far more dangerous than illness or injury begins to take root: the loss of purpose. Purpose is not a luxury. It is a necessity, as vital to the human spirit as air is to the lungs. It is the reason to rise in the morning, the spark behind effort, the thread that stitches days into meaning. But for many older people, that thread begins to fray. They retire from careers that once defined them. Their children no longer need them. Their homes grow quieter, their social circles smaller. And gradually, they begin to ask a question that is as painful as it is profound. What am I still here for? This question is rarely spoken aloud. It settles in the background of daily life. It appears in long silences, in sighs, in the slow shuffle from room to room. It's in the way meals become simpler, conversations shorter, goals fewer. For some, it becomes a haunting echo. I've lived my life. Now what? Purpose, when lost, doesn't just affect the mind. It reshapes the body. Studies show that older adults who feel they lack purpose are significantly more likely to suffer from physical decline, cognitive deterioration, and even premature death. The heart beats less steadily. The immune system weakens. The body responds as if it's preparing to give up because the mind has already started to. But the tragedy is not just in the decline, it's in the misunderstanding. Society, too, often views the elderly as people who have finished their part in the story. The spotlight moves on. The wisdom, experience, and insight they carry become undervalued, ignored. The contributions they could still make to family, to community, to themselves are brushed aside. And so, slowly, many begin to believe what the world seems to be saying, that they are no longer needed. Yet inside every aging soul, the desire to matter still burns. A person doesn't stop needing purpose at 60 or 70 or 90. That longing doesn't vanish with gray hair or creaking knees. In fact, in many ways, it deepens. Because the older a person becomes, the more they want their time to mean something, not just to have existed, but to have lived with significance. It is a quiet agony to wake each day without a why, to go through the motions without direction, to feel like a spectator in one's own life. Even small losses, no longer being the one to cook family meals, no longer being asked for advice, no longer being the one others lean on, can chip away at the sense of identity. Without purpose, life becomes a long wait, not for anything in particular, but simply for the days to pass. But purpose is not something that vanishes forever. It changes shape, and often it waits to be rediscovered. Sometimes it emerges in caring for a pet, tending a garden, or mentoring a grandchild. Sometimes it lives in creating art, writing memories, or simply offering a listening ear to someone who needs it. The truth is, purpose doesn't have to be grand. It only has to be felt. It only has to light a corner of the soul. One woman, named Eleanor, found her purpose in writing letters to young girls in her community whom she'd never met. Each week, she would handwrite notes of encouragement and kindness and have them delivered through a local youth group. She was 84, homebound, and no longer able to attend church or social events. But through her letters, she touched lives. She mattered. She woke each morning with a reason. Purpose can also live in reflection, in the peace of knowing that one's life, in all its joys and struggles, has shaped others. That existence itself has been a gift. Sometimes it is enough simply to bear witness, to hold the history of a family, to be the keeper of stories, to sit in quiet strength for the younger ones to look up to. But what helps reignite purpose most is connection. Being seen, being heard. When others take the time to ask, "What do you love?" or "What makes you proud?" they remind the elderly that their lives are still unfolding, that their story is not yet over. Purpose grows in places where people are valued, where their voices matter, where they are not merely visited but engaged. No person is ever too old to have a reason for being, and no life is ever too far along to hold beauty, meaning, or grace. Purpose is not about productivity. It's not about doing more. It's about being part of something, feeling connected, knowing in some deep way that the world would be different without you. We often believe the road to a long life is paved solely with medicine, diet, or exercise. But now we know loneliness, lost purpose, emotional stress, societal neglect, and quiet regrets can weigh just as heavily on the soul as any illness. Aging is not simply a physical journey. It's deeply emotional, spiritual, and social. The truth is, many people don't die from old age. They die from a life that's slowly been stripped of meaning, connection, and hope. But it doesn't have to be this way. Whether you're growing older or love someone who is, you have the power to make a change. Start the conversations. Rebuild the connections. Reignite the purpose. Life doesn't end at 80. It can begin anew, even then. The clock may tick, but the heart still beats strong when it has a reason. Let's make sure no one grows old feeling forgotten. Let's choose to live fully and deeply,